All right, so welcome to Tips on Teaching Pronunciation. Nicole Mannino Johnson, and I'll be your host today. Thanks so much for taking time on a Saturday morning and learning a bit about tutoring. Okay, so today's talk, I'm Nicole Mannino Johnson. I'm the Special Projects Manager at Literacy Pittsburgh. Some of the things I do for Literacy Pittsburgh are create custom curricula for local employers where we deliver classes in ESL for employees. I manage our citizenship and our digital literacy programs, and I teach English language learners that are employed with our local partners, English for the workplace. Okay, so today you will learn strategies and resources for teaching pronunciation to English language learners. Okay, so I'm going to try a poll. How do you feel about pronunciation? If you have a phone or if you are not in full screen mode, you can join the poll at slido.com and you can enter this number and you can just type a word or a phrase about how you feel, and then it'll start popping up on the screen. So let's go ahead and try that. Okay, seeing lots of different feelings about teaching pronunciation, which I've also gone through all of those emotions. Sometimes I'm nervous, sometimes I feel like I don't know enough, and I do have a BA in linguistics, so I think I do. Sometimes I feel confident, but there's always things to learn. It's always good to be aware if you're overly critical. Yeah, lack of what to do. We're going to go over some tips on how to incorporate it. Great. And some confident people. I love that. Yeah. So thanks for sharing. And I'm glad the poll worked. Okay. So first, I'm just going to do an overview about pronunciation in general. So what is pronunciation? It's the sounds and the stress patterns produced when speaking a language. It includes consonant and vowel sounds. It includes rhythm, intonation, word level stress, sentence level stress, emphatic stress, rising and falling intonation, like asking a question, pitch. So there's a lot involved in pronunciation, and this is not all inclusive. There is a lot of physical features of our bodies that are involved in pronunciation. There's muscles, bones, organs, our lungs are involved, our tongue, our brain, our mouth, our teeth, our jaw, our nose, our throat, our esophagus. And there's a lot of parts inside the mouth and the throat that are involved. You don't need to know all this to teach pronunciation, but sometimes I like to remind students that it's not like they're not doing something good. It's a lot involved. It's like exercise. You have to practice and exercise in order to develop those muscles, in order to train your brain on these new sounds. So it can be difficult to train ourselves to produce new sounds. Broca's area is an area in our brain that's responsible for speech production and language processing. And there's been a lot of research about this area of the brain. And I found it interesting that babies that learn 2 languages at the same time and apparently effortlessly, those 2 languages are both in the same section of Broca's area. So all the sounds of both languages are together in one area. But people that are adults that are learning a second language, the area is segregated. And so it actually, our brain develops a new section for the second language, which can sometimes, this is development, brain development. Our brain is continually growing. So pronunciation can take time. Our brain is actually creating a new area, which I find really amazing. Another aspect of this is that since our sounds that we learned as babies are in this area, it's not like we can't learn new sounds, but it's almost somewhat fossilized in there. And so the sounds that we hear from infanthood are there, and then new sounds aren't there. So it can be difficult to process those sounds. It can be difficult to hear those sounds. And hearing is the first step in producing a new sound. Okay, so we are actually going to watch a video, and I want you to just watch and notice. We're not going to hear any sound in this video. We're just going to watch the speaker's face and mouth and notice, what do you see when they're speaking? Do you see their teeth? Do you see their tongue? Is the mouth open a lot? Is it closed? Do the cheeks and muscles move a lot? Do you see a lot of facial movement? And then I want you to guess what language they're speaking. Okay. So we're going to watch first one person, and then we'll talk about it. And then we'll watch a second person and talk about it. Okay. So feel free to unmute yourself. And what did you notice about this person's mouth and face?
The teeth and tongue were visible a lot, but the cheeks didn't move a whole lot.
Okay.
She opened her mouth a lot, very wide.
Yeah.
I felt like she was smiling a lot, but I didn't know if that was a cultural thing or a linguistic thing to produce the sound.
And what language do you think they were speaking?
I'm guessing Spanish.
Okay.
Having a clue.
French.
Okay.
I'm going to toss out German.
All right. So that speaker was speaking American English. Okay. And so when speaking American English, we saw her teeth, we saw her tongue. She was smiling. We're smilers in this culture. So she was speaking American English. All right, so now we're going to watch a second speaker, and we're going to just observe him the same way and talk about it afterward. Oops. There we go. Okay, so what did you notice about this speaker?
his face hardly moved at all. Even his lips hardly moved at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No teeth, no mouth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any guesses on what language you were speaking?
Korean, maybe?
Okay.
Gonna go out on a limb and say American English again.
Vince, you're correct. He was speaking English, but he was speaking English with a Korean mouth. Okay. So this kind of shows you like how physical pronunciation is. And if he's speaking with a Korean mouth, he might sound like he has a heavy accent. And our cheeks, our tongues, everything is involved. And so this is something even I show my students, the difference between these two speakers, and we talk about it. And I encourage them to kind of look in a mirror when they're speaking to see how their mouths look. And depending on what language they're coming from, there might be more or less of a difference between English and their native language or their first language. Okay. All right, so let's do some teaching tips. General tips, accents are perfectly fine. Our goal is not to eliminate an accent. Our goal is to help our students have confidence, to be understood, to feel good about speaking and feel like they can be understood. I find that students, after learning a little bit and practicing, they feel better about speaking English. They feel like they can do it. And that's always my goal, is to help people feel confident in their own abilities. A lot of times people can be very self-critical and think that they have to sound like perfectly like an American English speaker. American English is all across the board. We don't all sound alike. And there was an old term, standard American English. It's kind of been replaced with like general English, general American English, because we don't want people to feel like there's a standard they're not hitting. But we do want people to be understood. Okay? We want people to be understood. And maybe their goal is to reduce their accent. So if that is your student's goal, that's perfectly fine too. But we don't want to put across that they need to do this. It's whatever the student's goal is, we're there to help them. Pronunciation practice does not have to be this big independent lesson. We're not all speech and language coaches. We can incorporate this into short bursts in an overall lesson. You focus on a couple sounds at a time, a couple words at a time. Use the same words you're teaching in another lesson. If you're doing a reading lesson, take words that are in that reading passage that may be difficult and focus on those words and how to pronounce them. So I have an example from one of the trainings that I've done. Someone had a friend who was an English language learner, and they both had children in school. And the friend said, "Oh, my daughter goes to a lemon tree school." And the person listening was very confused. What is a lemon tree school? Okay. So does anyone know what is a lemon tree school?
Elementary.
Elementary school. Okay. This is why stress is important. The person was so confused. They're thinking it's a school that has the name Lemon Tree. No, it's elementary. But the way they spoke it, the way they put stress, it's the same sounds together, but they put stress on lemon. Okay, elementary school, as mentry is the stress. Lemon, different word. So sometimes it's not the individual sounds, actually many times it's not the individual sounds that make problems. It's the overall stress and rhythm of speaking that causes confusion. So word level stress is important. Teach word level stress. Stress is the syllable in a word that's the strongest and the longest. In elementary school, it's men, elementary school, okay? English words have one primary stressed syllable. Don't get into secondary and tertiary stress with your students. It's too much. It's, you know, PhD level stuff that you don't have to get into. Focus on whatever the syllable that's primary stressed. Stress is more important for understanding than individual sounds. They can make mistakes with the individual sounds, but if the stress is correct, they'll more likely be understood. Talk with your hands, okay? When I'm teaching stress, I use my hand. So one technique is the open hand. So elementary school. It's a visual and kinesthetic way of seeing where it is stressed. You can have your students do the same thing. Alternatively to open hand, you can kind of be like a conductor. Elementary school. Okay, so you can use your finger, and then when the stress goes up, your finger goes up, and then you go back down. Okay. So using your hands and having a visual for when to stress can be helpful. You can watch YouTube. This is what I do. I like to watch YouTube and see how other teachers are teaching it. It's very helpful. You get good tips. You see what you might want to emulate and what you might not want to emulate. I really like the accent channel, and I will share some resources with you at the end that shows you places you can find resources for teaching pronunciation.
On a related note, there was a question in the chat. Will these slides be available after the session?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's look at the word level stress for these 6 words. Okay, so I'm going to say each word, and I want you to tell me how many syllables. Okay. Maybe your student doesn't know what a syllable means, right? So a syllable is how many vowel sounds are in a word. I've also heard it described as how many times your chin kind of goes down. So language, okay? Language. Language has 2 syllables, right? You can also kind of do it with clapping. Language, okay? So the first thing I do is help students identify how many syllables. Let's do this with the second one. Teacher. Teacher. How many syllables? 2. Okay. Tutor. Tutor. 2. Conference. Conference.
2.
Hey, Vince has 2 or 3 up. How am I saying it? Conference. I say it with 2 syllables, okay? Some people might say conference, right? If you're one of those people, it's gonna be 3 syllables. This is a regional thing. One is not incorrect or correct. It's just a regional difference, and they're both perfectly fine. Education, education. Okay.
4.
4, yeah. And American. American. 4. Okay, I'm going to go through this again, and I want you to listen for the syllable in each word that's louder, a little longer, a little stronger. That's going to be our stressed syllable. Okay, so for our first one, make sure I see what the first one is. Language. Language. First syllable. Language, language. Okay, so if we're doing this with our hand, language, exaggerate it, make it slower. Language, have your student really draw out that stress syllable for practice. What do you notice about my mouth when I'm saying it? Language, language. How's my mouth? Is it open or closed? Ah, you see my mouth, it's open, okay? Language, I'm smiling. Ah, language. So these are things you can point out to your student. Have them look at your mouth, then have them look in a mirror at home, and they can see how does their mouth look when they're trying to say this. Second one, teacher, 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 right? First syllable is stressed. Tutor, tutor, same. First syllable is stressed. Sometimes we find patterns. We can find patterns in, these are all 2-syllable words with the first syllable stressed. You can put those together in a section if you're looking at a lot of words. Conference, okay? The way I say it, it matches our pattern here. First syllable is stressed. Conference. All right. Now, what do we have? Education. Education. The third syllable, right? So I can say education, 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 education. So whatever you do with your hand, as long as you're consistent with it, your student will get the hang of it. And American, American, second syllable, American, American. All right, have your student repeat and use their hand, okay? Using their hand really helps the brain picture where it is. And it's like exercise. You're exercising their mouth muscles, they're exercising their lungs, they're developing an area of their brain. A lot's going on. Another thing you can do with your students is have them notate stress on paper. One way of doing this, and there's not a, you pick what way makes sense for you. I put a period in between each syllable personally, and then you can have them underline the stress syllable or circle it or make it bold or all capital. Whatever way makes sense for you and your student is fine. Just be consistent with it. And then they can look at it at home when they're practicing and see if they're producing it correctly. Okay, if you're not sure if you have the right syllable stressed by ear, look in a dictionary, online dictionaries. This one is dictionary.com. So we see the word American, and it has a little like pronunciation guide here. And it says like, and it uses a dash between each one. And mare is the stress syllable. It has it in bold. Okay. And then you can listen to how it sounds. Same with pronunciation. Okay. Pronunciation, pronunciation. So if you're not sure, double check a dictionary. You can teach your students to check a dictionary. This can be helpful to them. They can listen to it and get the rhythm down, get the stress down. Have you done any of these things already with your students? Let's see, some yes, some no.
I've worked with them on past tense, when to pronounce the ED and when not to pronounce. And I don't know if there's an actual hard and fast rule between learned and learned. Anyway, I've worked on them not pronouncing the ED as a separate syllable.
Yes, that's great. And that is word level stress. It's also individual sound. So depending on the consonant that comes before that ED, it can sound different ways. And I would say learned is an adjective and learned is the verb.
Yeah, that's, yeah. And by the way, I don't have my video on this. I'm in my pajamas. So
Okay.
you guys know. I'm not being antisocial.
All right. Next, let's talk about sentence level stress. This is where we get into a little more of the rhythm of English. English has a unique rhythm. We stress important words in a sentence, like verbs and nouns. And we rush through or unstress little words like to and the, generally speaking. Okay, there's always exceptions. If we're using emphatic stress, that's a different topic. Some languages are different in that they give equal stress to every syllable. Okay, and they might bring that over to English. Okay? And it sounds funny. It sounds hard. You're not sure like what they're trying to say. Sentence, level, stress, rhythm. I'm giving equal stress to each thing. I sound a little robotic, but that's normal in other languages. French is actually not a stress-timed language. This is the fancy linguistic word, is stress-timed language. English is a stress-timed language. French, Spanish, Mandarin, Nepali, Korean, these are all syllable-timed languages where they give equal stress to every syllable. I do have a recommendation for 3 videos to watch. It's also from the Accent channel about rhythm and then sentence level stress. There's a part 1 and a part 2. Those will be in the resources that are provided at the end. I watch these myself. I watch them with students. I have them notice. You can even like kind of make it like music, and English has a rhythm. Okay, English has a rhythm. Reductions. Okay. Gotta, have to, shoulda, woulda, coulda, gonna. Okay. People are in the real world. They are going to hear these. I practice these with students, especially not that they need to say it like this, but they need to be able to hear and understand what other people are saying. This comes up a lot in workplaces. I teach a lot of students that work in kitchens, that work in housekeeping, that work at Giant Eagle. You're going to hear these things with the public, with your coworkers, and it's really fast and it's all smushed together. So we practice with these. What are you going to do today? What are you going to do today? Okay. If you said this to an English language learner, they're going to be looking at you like you're speaking a different language than English. But I'm saying, what are you going to do today? That's not how anybody talks. So getting people, getting your learner to hear the reduction, to hear how it sounds. It is a certain rhythm. Okay. If I'm saying, what are you going to do today? What is the stressed word in that? What are you going to do today? Do. What are you going to do today? Right. So there still is some rhythm in there, even though it's all kind of crunched together. Okay. I have to go to work. I have to go to work. Okay. Have to is really squished together. Go and work are a little more stressed. So you can hear that sentence level stress in there, and everything else is kind of crunched together. American English is about timing. We kind of like time everything in the same amount of time. There could be 20 words or 10 words and we're squishing them all together. So we give a little more emphasis to our important words like nouns and verbs and question words, and everything else gets squished together and reduced. Okay, we have a quiz. So please join the quiz either on your phone or in a different window. And let's see. Okay, so how many vowel sounds are in American English? Okay, you guys are good. Yep, it's 15 to 20. Why is there a variance? This is regional. I'm from the New York area, and I have more vowel sounds than people in California. Okay. There's actually a divide in somewhere in the middle of the country. There's 3 words, which I'm going to share. I find this stuff fascinating, but okay. When you say these 3 words, do they sound the same or do they sound different? Anyone want to give it a go? Unmute yourself and tell us how you sound.
They sound the same to me.
Sound the same to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They sound different to me, but that's because I know what the words are. A non-native speaker might easily confuse them.
There's actually a regional pronunciation difference. So when I say it, I say Mary, and I say Mary and marry. Mary, so air. What's our second one? Sorry, Mary, right? Marry, marry, I'm using 3 different vowel sounds. There's a divide in this country. People on one side of it, these are the same vowel sound. Okay. So even if we're spelling them differently, some people say all these 3 with the same vowel sound. That's why we have a variance in how many vowel sounds. There are regional differences.
One thing that's odd to me is I'm from Western PA, so same side of the country as you, but I pronounce them all the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Me too.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm from Eastern Pennsylvania originally, and I pronounce them all differently.
Mhm.
Same as you. Mary, Mary, marry.
Yes. Yep. All right. So this brings us to letters do not equal sounds. Okay. We have 5 or 6 vowel letters in English, but we have 15 to 20 vowel sounds. This can make it tricky. Our spelling system is not phonetic. Okay. English combines words. We borrow words from many different languages, and we don't change the spelling, and we don't make them fit our pronunciation patterns. Other languages borrow words, but they make them fit. For example, Hawaiian says mele kaleki maka for Merry Christmas. Okay, they're fitting our word into their sound pattern. Okay, mele kaleki maka. They have to have a vowel after each consonant. Okay, we don't. When we're borrowing words, we say hors d'oeuvre, like French say it, kind of. We borrow that word directly, we take their spelling, we try to say it like French people say it. So that's what makes it a little tricky. And that is part of why our sounds are not the same as our letters. First, practice with listening, okay? Like babies. Babies don't talk for the first year of their lives. They are listening, they're absorbing. That Broca's area of their brain is growing and developing. Same with English language learners. We're growing a new area of our brain, and listening and hearing the sounds. At first, some students may not hear the difference, like Mary, Mary, and Mary. Okay, you might not hear the difference because in your brain, they're all the same sound. So when I say it, you're hearing the same thing that you say. Minimal pairs. You may have heard this before. They are 2 words that are exactly the same except for one sound. Okay, we'll talk about this a little more. This is one way of helping your student distinguish sounds. And then first they need to distinguish it, and then they can practice producing it. Okay. And word families can be helpful as well. So let's take a look here. Minimal pairs. So you can give your students a list of minimal pairs. First, you'll pronounce, and I'm going to go over this in the next slide. So if you're not exactly sure what I'm talking about, that's okay. First, you're going to pronounce one column and then the other column while your students are listening. Then you're going to pronounce each word and the student's going to repeat it for one column and then the next column. Then you're going to pronounce each word across one of the words. So it's going to make more sense in a second because it's rows and columns. One word on each line, and the student's going to either point or circle the word that they hear. So here's an example of minimal pairs. The only difference is the sound s versus sh. Okay. So first, I'm going to pronounce all the words with the s sound. Sip, seat, so, sue, sock, same. Now listen, and I'm going to pronounce all the words with the sh sound. Ship, sheet, show, shoe, shock, shame. Okay, now I want you to repeat after me. Okay, first column, we're going to practice s sound. Sip. Good. Seat.
Seat.
Good. So.
Are we supposed to be saying it as well?
Yep, repeat
Oh,
after
okay.
me.
Okay. So.
Sue.
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 Yeah.
Sock.
Sock.
Same.
Same.
Now let's practice sh sound. Ship.
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 Sheet.
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 Show.
Show.
Shoe.
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 Shock.
Shock.
Shame.
Shame.
Great. Okay. Now I'm going to say one word on each line. I want you to tell me which word I am saying. Okay. First word, ship. Ship.
Ship.
Ship.
Second.
Okay. So
SH.
second one, SH, right? Good.
Ship happens.
Next one, seat.
The first one.
Seat. Okay, great, with the S, perfect. Next one, show. Show. Okay, great, you guys are perfect. So this is how I might go through a minimal pair list with a student. Okay. First, you go through the one sound, then the next sound. They're listening, then they're repeating, and then they're deciding which one you can, which one you're saying. This helps with sound recognition. Word families, okay, the IT word family. This helps with recognizing our crazy spelling patterns. They don't make any sense, but we're teaching them anyway. So we know that these all sound the same. You could have IT on one side and then individual letters on another side and kind of replace the letter to have them pronounce each of those. That's a little bit more of a beginner level thing. If you have a more advanced student, you can either skip that or just point out that this is a word family and they all sound the same. So IT, light, right, fight, sight, night. Okay. Notice that there are some letters we don't hear. Okay, point out that there are silent letters when we're writing sometimes. You can also show that this word family sounds the same as like ITE, bite, right? Sight, the other sight. And so you can compare word families and show that all of these different spellings equal the same sound. Okay, one example. So I want to show one individual sound example, TH. It's very difficult for many English language learners. This is not a sound that's in a lot of languages. It's awkward. you stick your tongue out. That can be rude to some people. I make people in my class stick their tongues out really far and practice that for a while. It's uncomfortable at first, but it also is extending their muscle. Your tongue is a muscle. They're not used to doing that. So you want to have them practice this, exaggerate it. So one way you can practice this sound is with the calendar, okay? 4th, 5th, 6th, exaggerate it, get that tongue far out there. And I tell them this, when you're really speaking in real life, your tongue doesn't have to stick out that far. But when you're practicing, make it stick out really far. Look in a mirror, you can be by yourself so that you don't feel embarrassed. But that helps the tongue get the motion that's needed and the placement that's needed in the mouth. Practice minimal pairs with TH and S, okay? Thing, sing, right? Thought, sought. Another thing I kind of forgot to mention with minimal pairs, when you're first doing them, it's easiest if the minimal pair is at the beginning of the word, okay? So the first sound in the word, start with that. Then you can move to middle and last sounds. But always start with the first sound of the word. And watch YouTube. If you Google or put into the YouTube search minimal pair and you put 2 sounds, you'll come up with a whole host of resources. You can watch them together with your student. This takes some pressure off of you. You're watching it together, and then you can practice together. Okay. We have some time for questions. You don't have to type them in here, but you can. Any questions, any comments, please let me know.
I have one right off the bat, actually. You mentioned teaching students to recognize reductions, gonna, shoulda, woulda. How do you usually train them to recognize those things?
Sure. Okay. Actually, let me pull up a worksheet that I have developed. Okay, so here is a worksheet that I've made. Actually going to take out, so it would really have like a blank line here. For each of these. Okay, and on the side, it has choices: have, got to, should have to, want, could have, am going to. And I kind of go over with them what those sound like when they're reduced. And then I will say each sentence and they fill in the blank. Okay, so number 1, I want to go to work this weekend. I want to work this weekend, sorry, no go in there. I want to work this weekend. And they pick want to or wanna, and they put it in there. Okay, I gotta work this weekend. I gotta work this weekend. They would choose have, got to, hopefully, and write that in there. I could have worked this weekend. I could have worked this weekend. Could have, and they're gonna write it in there. So that's one way that you can do it. First, you have to teach them what it is that we're actually saying. So you're going to write all those out. I have got to work this weekend. And then you're going to say it, I have to work this weekend. And they're going to hear that and be surprised that that's what you're actually saying. So that is one way that you can do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole, do you know if there's anything on the reductions in the standout books? And would you teach that at the lowest level, like any level, or wait till they're more intermediate?
I'm not familiar completely with the standout, so I don't know what they have in terms of pronunciation. Probably would not do reductions with very beginners though. I would probably wait in their until they're like intermediate. For beginners, you're really going to want to focus on hearing sounds. You could do some basic minimal pairs with consonants first. Don't try to do vowels yet. Vowels are a lot harder to distinguish.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question about when to, I would say, stop the student from mispronouncing a word. Do you do it at the time, or do you wait for the thought to end, or how does that work? Is there a consistent method to do that properly? I have a very good relationship with the student. She actually told me in the first meeting to stop her immediately.
Okay.
But I just didn't want to lose the train of thought in the sentence or the paragraph or the tense or wherever.
So this is a little tricky, right? Because
Right.
yeah, you don't want to stop their train of thought. But on the other hand, she's requesting that. So I would, you're not going to do this every time she makes a mistake. But let's say you're working on the ED sounds at the
Right.
end of past tense verbs. Those you can correct immediately. Okay. You're talking about that. So you want to correct what it is you're working on at that moment. The other ones, you could wait till she's finished and say, hey, you know, instead of saying elementary school, this is how we say it, elementary school, elementary school. And then after she's done with her train of thought, you can kind of teach in the moment. But if it's something that you were just working on, you've been going over it and she makes a mistake, then immediate correction would be good.
There's actually a little bit of humor involved with this because she's a late 30s mom. And a lot of the sentences in the grammar practice we're doing relates to like early 20-somethings dating. So she has no concept of how that works in the American culture yet. And
yeah,
but she's going to learn. She has high school students.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny when it comes across like that, she just turns red and starts laughing.
Yes.
Something that I've seen as a coordinator who tests students is there are different student styles where some will, I should say English language learner styles, where some will like barrel straightforward regardless of how many mistakes they're making. And there are some that will self-correct so often that it actually makes them impossible to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's also a balance to strike, is where is your student in these things? Are they thinking too much or not enough?
Yeah, good point, Vince. Susan?
I have a couple things I'd like to contribute to the conversation, but as far as the current topic, I try to divide between low stakes and high stakes speech. So like at the beginning of when we're saying, how was your week and how was your day? I only correct them if I can't understand them. And then when we're working on something, that's high stakes. And then I follow what Nicole said. If you're working on it and they make a mistake, then absolutely correct them right away in the minute. And then I'll mind encouraging this, then I won't. That sounds ugly. I will have them say it again until I get it right.
Yeah, that's great. And I do that when I'm teaching citizenship too. Like a really hard word to say is eligible, but they have to say it. And so I immediately correct that one, and I'll do the like eligible, and we say it again and again and again, and then I'll have them say the whole thing again. But if it's, you know, how's the weather, they can just say what they're saying, and you want them to feel comfortable and confident. So always go back to that. You want to boost confidence. Yeah.
Well, and then
Go
to
ahead.
add to that, if the student genuinely doesn't get it after a couple times, like, then it's something you can come back to. It's not like I make them say it that way, but
Yeah.
that sounded really bad. But sometimes you realize that they're not going to succeed this time, and it's best not to discourage them. So just say, oh, good job, and tuck it away. Then sometimes it's a readiness issue, in my opinion.
Yes, absolutely. And modeling is part of this. So you're modeling the correct sound again and again and again. They're hearing that, and it's going to take a while for their brain to process that, for their tongue to learn how to do it. So it takes time.
Can I say my other thing now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I've done, because I think I'm teaching a little lower level than you're presentation is designed for. So, and I speak their language. So I'm only teaching English speakers or Spanish speakers right now. And so I know like the pitfalls. But when I started like the way I'm doing it right now, when I started the minimal pairs, I'm bringing in some sign language, and they just have to tell me if they're hearing the same word or a different word. And it's been really, really good for, I mean, on the screen, there's no circling or nothing, just, is it the same or different? So if anybody wants to use it.
Another way, like if you are in person, I print out, like if, let's say it's Spanish speakers and you're doing B and V, I'll print out little cards that say B and V on them, and they have them. And so they can hold up B or hold up V for what they hear. So that's another way you can do it. It makes it look kinesthetic. Another game you can do if you're in person, you have more people, you can write the words on a board and have fly swatters and make it a competition. So you say a word and they have to smack the words they hear. Students really enjoy that when we're in person.
I think the letters on cards game can be done online with a little bit more preparation of like instructing them specifically to write on the cards and everything, but they can still do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Vince, I would just do sign language. I mean, they're going to do B and V, you know.
Yeah.
No writing needed.
Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
I like to use a tic-tac-toe or a bingo matrix and put the minimal pairs, and the students enjoy the competition, breaking them up into groups, and they could learn from each other and they have fun at the same time doing that.
Yeah, that is a great activity. I like to do that with the TH sound and calendar numbers. That one is a lot of fun, and there's always a lot of mistakes, and they like to laugh at themselves. Well, thanks so much for joining. I hope this was helpful to you. I will provide those resources. I'm not sure who's going to send it out, but somebody will send it out to you. You'll be able to get a copy of the slideshow, and I've made a document that has links with resources.
Thank you. It was very helpful.
Yes,
Yeah, it's good.